Hello, Algebra 2 students. Today we're going to start out by watching this video, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about it as we go. So what could this have to do with math, and why do you think I would be showing you this video? The next type of function we're going to study has something to do with speed and braking distance and that, so let's keep watching. I accidentally muted him. Hang on a second. So what do you think? How fast was he going? And can we tell how fast he was going? And what would we use to tell how fast he's going?
Okay, here's what I found about braking distances on my phone.
Okay. Who might be concerned with being able to figure out how fast somebody was going? Maybe the police, maybe the insurance people. Okay. It's important in accident investigation to know how fast somebody was going. You ever heard an accident report where they said there were no skid marks, which means they didn't even touch the brakes? Let's keep watching. He stopped so he didn't hit that turtle. He was going too fast for that little street, wasn't he? 68 miles an hour. All right. Let's go on and see what this has to do with. I don't want to do that. Square root functions. Okay. Let's go here. And here. Today we start a square root function. Let me show you on Desmos. So our parent function for this is y equals the square root of x. This is our parent function. Notice the graph. It has an endpoint at 0, 0. Our other functions we've studied had arrows going both ways. Think about, we had in Algebra 1, you did linear functions. Linear function had arrows going both ways. Quadratic function had arrows going both ways. Absolute value function had arrows going both ways. Look at the square root function, has an endpoint at 0, 0. Today you're going to be looking at the attributes of this, like domain and range and x-intercept and y-intercept. So let's see what we can find out about this one. This is just the parent function. We're going to be looking at this in the form y equals a times the square root of x minus h plus k. Those letters should look familiar. On here, this is your endpoint, which, by the way, are letters h and k. Your domain, think about, where do the x's start? The x's start at 0, and they get bigger from there. So the domain is x is greater than or equal to 0. What about the range? the range. The y values start here at 0, and they go up from there. Y is greater than or equal to 0. X-intercept is 0, 0. The y-intercept is 0, 0. Those are attributes of square root functions. So let's go back and look at some examples. That's not what I wanted. Okay. Graph the square root function, give the domain and range using inequalities. We did that. Move this over here. Domain is x is greater than or equal to 0. Y is greater than or equal to 0. This is, can the square root be negative? No, because square root means a positive square root. A negative symbol in front of the square root is the negative square root. So this is just the positive part. Okay. Graph the square root function, give the domain and range using inequalities. So if you graph that one, square root of x plus 2, not 5, 2. Now what's your domain? The x's still start at 0. X's still start at 0. The range this time starts at 2. Okay. Remember, domain describes all the x values, range describes all the y values. The x-intercept here, is there an x-intercept here? There's not. Is there a y-intercept here? The y-intercept is 2. There's no x-intercept because it doesn't touch the x-axis. Okay. Here's your graph. Domain and range, pretty easy. This one is -1. If you remember from your A, H, and K, that 1 is a K. It's going to move down 1. So if we look at our graph, change this +2 to a -1. The other one went up 2. This now we're changing that +2 to a -1. That's going to go down 1. Now, what's your domain? Your domain is still x is greater than or equal to 0. Your range this time is y is greater than or equal to -1. What transformation took place from the parent function? It moved down 1. You'll find that your A, H, and K not plus h. What is it? You remember? Minus h. Okay. The k is still the up and down. The h is still the left and right. And it's opposite. X plus h is left. X minus h is right. The a is still the width, just like in our other functions. Okay. There you go. All right, let's look at the next example. Intercepts. Pretty easy. X-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis or touches the x-axis. Y-intercept where it touches the y-axis. It's be pretty easy. Let's see.
In this problem, you will identify intercepts of square root functions. Graph the function f of x equals the square root of x. Identify the x and y intercepts.
And we did that a few minutes ago on Desmos.
First, graph the function.
Very easy. X to 0, 0.
Identify the x and y intercepts. This function crosses the x-axis at x equals 0, and it crosses the y-axis at y equals 0. X-intercept is the point 0, 0. And y-intercept is the point 0, 0.
Too easy, right? we think ahead a minute,
X and Y intercepts.
if we think ahead a minute, this x plus 4, that's h, so it's going to go to the left. So if we graph it,
X intercept. X-intercept occurs at the x down, that makes f of x equal to 0. Since the square root of 0 equals 0, you need to find the f value that makes the expression under the radical equal to 0. X-intercept. This function crosses the x-axis when x plus 4 equals 0. X equals negative 4. It's the y-axis when x equals 0. Y equals 2.
or you could graph that and you could see the x-intercept and the y-intercept also. But so two ways you can find intercepts. One, you can graph, or else you can plug in for the x-intercept, you plug a 0 for the y-intercept, you plug a 0 for the x. So finding intercepts, you plug a 0 for the opposite letter.
Is the point negative 4, 0. Is the point 0, 2.
Okay, let's go on. Graph this and find its x and y intercepts. So it is square root of x minus 3. X-intercept is 9, 0. Y-intercept is 0, negative 3. There it is. Or you could plug in a 0 for the y. If you plugged a 0 for the y, show you how that works. You would add the 3, square both sides. And then for the y-intercept, plug in 0 for the x. There are your x-intercept and your y-intercept. So two ways you can do that, either by the graph or replace the opposite letter with 0. Okay. Now let's look at this one, maximum and minimum. We've done this before. Some of you had a little trouble with it.
In this problem, you will identify maximum and minimum values of square root functions. Part F. Graph the square root function f of x equals the square root of x. Find the maximum and minimum values over the interval. X is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 4.
In other words, find the highest point and the lowest point between where x is 1 and x is 4. So you only want the part of the graph between the x values 1 and 4. Then you want to look at that graph between where x is 1 and where x is 4. Let's see how they do it here.
The portion of the graph
is 1 and where x is 4.
Maximum y values.
So where x is 1, y is 1.
That the function increases over the interval. X is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 4. The minimum and maximum values are found on two endpoints of the interval. The minimum value is f of 1, which equals 1. The maximum value is f of 4, which equals 2.
So you can graph those and you can look where those two numbers that it gave you the interval for, look between those two, find the lowest point and the highest point. Or I think what it's going to tell you in a minute, you can also plug those numbers in, like the square root of 1 is 1, the square root of 4 is 2. You can also do it that way. What they're going to tell you.
Part B. Graph the square root function f of x equals the square root of the quantity x minus 3 minus 1. Find the maximum and minimum values over the interval. X is greater than or equal to 3 and less than or equal to 8.
Okay, this was x minus 3 minus 1. They want us to find the maximum and the minimum over the interval between 3 and 8. Yes, between 3 and 8. So where x is 3, there's where x is 3. There's where x is 8. So we just want so this is the lowest point. Where x is 3, the y is negative 1. Yeah, negative 1. And where x is 8, the y is positive 1. So you look for those x values on that interval and then find the corresponding y values. And that's what they're going to tell you here.
First, graph the function. Now, look at the portion of the graph within the given interval. It also increases over the interval. X is greater than or equal to 3 and less than or equal to 8. Is f of 3. Which equals negative 1. Is f of 8. Which equals the square root of 5 minus 1.
I was a little off on my calculations there, huh? Square root of 5 minus 1. Okay. So you've seen here maximum and minimum, domain and range. We just need to look at transformations right quick. Actually, we'll do transformations in a different video. So you have an assignment there that is Savas Realized 6.2 that deals with attributes of square root functions, domain and range, x-intercept and y-intercept. I think this should be pretty easy for you. All right. Happy Monday.